Part 1, The Age of Strain. There is a strange quiet that falls upon the mind when it finally names its own weariness. For years we have lived at a pace no nervous system was designed to bear. Always alert, always responsive, always tense before the invisible demands of life. The clock, the letter, the ringing bell, the flicker of the screen, each pulls at our fibers like unseen hands. We have learned to call it progress. But beneath the applause of accomplishment, something quieter has been unraveling, the art of calm. The early psychologists of the last century spoke of nervous strain as though it were a disease of civilization, an ailment that rose with steam and steel, with the telegraph and the telephone. They saw that as the world accelerated, the human spirit grew taut. And now, in our own age, faster, louder, infinitely connected, their insight returns like prophecy fulfilled. We are not ill from work alone, we are ill from overstimulation. The world has outpaced the rhythms of the body, and the nerves, those trembling messengers between mind and flesh, have become our most faithful reporters. They tell us the truth of our condition, that we are too often strained beyond grace. To outwit our nerves, then, is not to silence them, it is to listen wisely. The trembling is not weakness, it is a signal. It says, you are trying to live more hours than there are in a day. You are breathing too shallowly for the soul that was meant to expand. The art of calm begins there, with reverent attention, with a gentler tempo of being. For calm is not born of escape, but of understanding. Nervousness, said Jackson and Salisbury, is simply energy ungoverned. It is life too abundant for its channels, seeking a way to flow without flooding. The task, then, is not to crush the vitality that trembles within us, but to give it form, to let it circulate in harmony with thought, movement, and rest. The cure for tension is not idleness, but rhythm. The soul must breathe. And so the age of strain becomes, potentially, the age of awakening. Every tremor of anxiety is a teacher. Every flutter of unrest invites us to rebuild our inner architecture on surer ground, not the ground of frantic effort but of poised response. For calm is not an accident of temperament, it is a discipline of attention, a cultivated strength, a choice repeated until it becomes nature again. To live in calm is not to flee life's commotion, but to stand at its center with an inward stillness that nothing can overthrow. This, the authors called outwitting our nerves, not defeating them but befriending them, mastering their language and redirecting their power toward peace. Part 2, The Nature of Nervousness. Nervousness, the old psychologists wrote, is not a sin but a maladjustment. A nervous person is not morally weak, they are simply out of rhythm with themselves. Their energy rushes where it should flow, halts where it should move, and in its confusion the whole organism suffers. The mind grows tense, the muscles tighten, and even thought becomes brittle. In every age the name changes, hysteria, neurasthenia, anxiety disorder, but the essence is the same. The human machinery of response has grown too sensitive, too quick to interpret life as threat. The ancient instinct that once served our survival now overfires in an era where the dangers are mostly invisible, expectations, deadlines, imagined judgments, the unending comparison with others. The nerves still leap to attention, ready for battle, but there is no battle to fight. The result is a kind of interior combustion, nervousness without outlet, energy without aim. The modern mind is rarely still enough to perceive how much this affects our entire sense of life. We confuse excitement for vitality, agitation for productivity, restlessness for ambition. And yet each of these is merely nervous energy wearing a mask. To outwit our nerves, we must strip these disguises away and learn again the feel of true energy, that which flows cleanly, calmly, joyfully, without haste or resistance. The nervous person, said the old teachers, must relearn relaxation as one relearns breathing. It cannot be forced. One cannot command the muscles to be calm. The more we try, the tighter we become. Calm must arise naturally, as warmth does from sunlight, when the conditions are right. It comes when the mind ceases to whip the body forward with imaginary threats, when it recognizes that safety is not something to chase, but something to rest into. This is why practical psychology, the kind Jackson and Salisbury taught, begins not with theory, but with the daily art of quiet living. A chair, a moment, a long exhale, these are instruments of recovery. For the nervous system is not an enemy to be subdued, but a living ally that must be educated gently. You cannot frighten it into peace, you must reassure it. And reassurance begins with truth. The nervous mind is haunted by exaggerations. What if, what then, what next? Until it drowns in its own imaginings. But the moment one looks directly without drama, the mirage begins to fade. For the nerves are loyal, They respond not to fantasy but to fact. When the mind is honest, the body follows. When the mind trusts, the body rests. The art of calm is, therefore, a kind of courage. The courage to see clearly and not flinch, to slow down without fearing loss, to inhabit each moment without fleeing to the next. In nervousness, the mind races ahead of life. In calm, it moves with life. One must learn again the rhythm of the heart's own tempo, not the clock's. Part 3. The Tyranny of Worry. Worry is the mind's most artful tormentor, the invisible hand that keeps the nerves forever taut. It is not merely thinking too much, it is thinking against oneself. Worry takes the imagination, that divine power of creation, and bends it toward destruction. It invents futures that never arrive and memories that never heal, and in doing so, it robs the present of all vitality. Every nervous person, said the authors, is in bondage to some form of worry. It may be fear of illness, of failure, of what others think, of what tomorrow may bring. Whatever its shape, worry operates by the same mechanism. It commands attention. It is the hypnosis of fear. The mind becomes fixated on its own projections and the body obeys, heart quickened, breath shortened, muscles tensed. The organism believes the imagined danger as though it were real. Thus, nervousness grows not from life itself, but from life distorted through the lens of apprehension. To outwit worry, then, is to awaken from this hypnosis. It is to call the mind back from its fevered rehearsal of catastrophe and anchor it again in the actual, the single living instant before us, where 99 of its imagined terrors do not exist. This is not mere positive thinking. It is sanity restored. Worry is not an emotion but a misuse of imagination, and imagination can be trained. The nervous person learns, through slow repetition, that the cure for worry is not argument but relaxation. You cannot outthink fear with more thought. You can only dissolve its grip by quieting the whole system that sustains it. Sit down, breathe, let the shoulders drop, and observe the mind's storm from a distance. Watch the images pass like clouds, each frightening, each unreal. The more you watch without reacting, the weaker they become. Calm attention is the great solvent. And here lies one of the most subtle truths of nervous psychology. Worry is powerless in the presence of true attention. It feeds only on distraction. When you see it wholly, without resistance, its illusion breaks. What remains is pure awareness, spacious, lucid, and still. This is the calm beyond argument. In time, the habit of worry fades, not because life becomes easier, but because one's relation to life changes. The mind ceases to anticipate suffering and begins to meet each experience as it comes, trusting its own adaptability. One learns that peace is not the absence of challenge, but the presence of steadiness amid it. The tyranny of worry ends the moment we realize that it was never a tyrant at all, only a frightened part of ourselves asking for reassurance. To outwit our nerves, then, is to extend compassion even to our fears. For in gentleness, the trembling ceases, and in calm, the mind remembers its natural strength. Part 4. The Quiet Mind. There is a silence that does not depend on the absence of sound. It is an interior stillness, discovered only when the mind has exhausted its own noise. For most of us, the mind is rarely quiet. It speaks even when we sleep, rehearses even when we rest. Its hum has become so constant that we mistake it for ourselves. But beneath that hum lies another presence, wide, clear, profoundly steady, the quiet mind. To the nervous temperament, silence can at first feel unbearable. Stillness reveals the mind's restlessness, the inner clamor that daily activity conceals. When one first sits alone, without distraction, one may feel not peace but agitation. The nerves twitch, the thoughts scatter, the body seeks motion. But this discomfort is not failure, it is the first exposure of the disorder we live in. The quiet mind must be reclaimed slowly, like a room long abandoned and filled with dust. One cleans, one opens the windows, one lets light in. The process is gentle, never forced. Jackson and Salisbury, writing in an age before the language of mindfulness, described this process as re-educating attention. The nervous mind, they said, is attention wasted upon its own sensations. To recover balance, one must turn that attention outward again, to the world as it is, not as we fear it. The quiet mind is not blankness, it is contact. It perceives directly, without commentary, without the tremor of self-judgment. It sees the tree as tree, the light as light, the moment as sufficient. The nervous person must learn this directness as an artist learns form. Look without interpreting. Listen without preparing to reply. Feel without bracing for pain. Slowly, the distance between stimulus and response widens. Within that space, freedom appears. The body softens, the breath deepens. The nerves begin to understand that life is not a series of alarms, but a sequence of unfoldings. There is time enough for each thing. To quiet the mind, one must not command silence but allow it. One must permit the mind to grow still as a pond grows clear when the wind dies. Every moment of true attention, to breath, to movement, to the rhythm of a sentence, the shape of a leaf, polishes that inner surface. In time, reflection replaces reaction. The same world, once overwhelming, now seems radiant with order. The quiet mind perceives not chaos but pattern, not threat but meaning. It has outwitted its nerves by restoring harmony between thought and life. In that stillness, a deeper truth appears. Calm is not passive. It is active composure. It is energy so perfectly balanced that it seems invisible, like the tension of a bow drawn but steady. The quiet mind is not emptiness but readiness, a poised receptivity to the next moment, whatever it brings. Part 5. The Psychology of Surrender. There is a point beyond effort where healing begins. It arrives not when we conquer our nerves but when we cease struggling with them. This is the paradox at the heart of calm. Only surrender restores control. Modern culture has taught us to fight, against fatigue, against uncertainty, against every trembling of the inner life. We tighten ourselves in the name of strength. But tension is not strength, it is fear hardening into posture. True composure arises not from resistance but from relinquishment, the letting go of that desperate will to manage every sensation, every outcome. Surrender, wrote the early psychologists, is the release of useless effort. It is the recognition that nervous control is not control at all but bondage. When the will interferes too much with the natural rhythm of the body, it produces the very disturbances it hopes to prevent. The nervous person who tries to force calm, who braces against anxiety, only multiplies their distress. The will must learn humility. It must learn to serve life, not dominate it. The psychology of surrender begins with trust. The nervous system, when not interfered with, has its own wisdom. The breath knows how to deepen, the muscles how to relax, the heart how to settle. One has only to allow these processes to resume their natural course. The difficulty lies in permission, for the anxious mind does not trust ease. It believes only in effort. To surrender is to contradict its most sacred habit, control. But there is a moment, often sudden, sometimes gradual, when one tires of resistance. One sees that every struggle has led only to greater exhaustion. In that moment, a door opens inward. The body softens, the mind yields. The self, once clenched like a fist, begins to unfurl. And through that release, calm returns like air entering a sealed room. This surrender is not defeat. It is alignment with the law of life itself. The waves of sensation rise and fall, but the ocean beneath remains undisturbed. The quiet mind, once found, knows how to ride those waves without drowning. The nervous person discovers that surrender does not destroy individuality, it redeems it. The will, no longer consumed with control, becomes free to act with clarity and grace. Strength reappears not as rigidity but as suppleness, like a tree that bends with the wind and therefore endures it. To surrender is to say yes to life, even in its uncertainty. It is to stop defending against experience and begin receiving it. In this receptivity lies an extraordinary healing. The nerves, once at war with existence, find peace in participation. They realize they were never meant to guard us from life, but to translate it, to carry its messages faithfully between body and mind. Once trusted, they cease to alarm, they begin to sing. Part 6. Living in Poise. Calm is not a single act but a way of being in the world. It is the expression of an inner equilibrium, a balance so constant that no outer movement can disturb it. This is what the old writers meant by poise. It is not merely self-control nor indifference, it is harmony in motion. To live in poise is to move through life as through water, yielding, adaptable, yet never losing one's direction. It is the art of responding, not reacting. Where nervousness clutches, poise releases. Where worry anticipates, poise waits. It is the serene intelligence of a dancer who feels the rhythm and trusts the step to come. But such grace is not innate, it is cultivated. The nervous temperament must practice poise as one practices a musical instrument, patiently, daily, through attention to tone. One begins with small moments, rising from a chair slowly instead of abruptly, answering a question after a breath instead of in haste, walking without hurry though the schedule is full. Each gesture becomes a training ground for equilibrium. The body learns what the mind forgets, that haste and fear are choices, not necessities. Poise depends upon 3 disciplines: awareness, proportion, and rest. Awareness keeps the mind present. proportion keeps emotion truthful, rest renews strength. Together they form a trinity of calm. Lose one and the others falter. Awareness without rest becomes vigilance. Proportion without awareness becomes rigidity. Rest without proportion becomes laziness. But united they create composure, a life lived at its proper pitch. In this state the nerves no longer dominate, they serve. The body becomes transparent to purpose. One thinks clearly, moves gracefully, speaks with quiet authority. The very atmosphere of a poised person soothes others, for calm is contagious. It radiates silently, altering the rhythm of every room it enters. This is why in every age the truly balanced are healers by presence alone. To live in poise is also to live truthfully. Nervousness thrives on pretense, on the effort to appear, to perform, to sustain an image that reality cannot support. Poise dissolves that pretense. It is the courage to be simple, direct, and whole. The poised mind wastes no energy in disguise, its strength lies in authenticity. And authenticity by its nature is peaceful. In the end, poise is the visible face of inner surrender. It is calm made flesh. When the mind is quiet, the will relaxed, and the heart aligned with truth, every gesture becomes effortless. The nervous system, once a battlefield, becomes an instrument of grace. Life moves through us as music moves through a string, without resistance, without waste. The nervous person who learns poise has, in the deepest sense, outwitted their nerves. They have turned the very mechanism of tension into a medium of harmony. And through that transformation, they become living proof of the book's enduring insight, that serenity is not a gift from the world, but a discipline of the cell. Part 7, The Body is Al. Why there is no calm apart from the body. Every thought, however ethereal, leaves its echo in the flesh. The nerves, the breath, the muscles, all are registers of the mind's condition. When we worry, they tighten. When we trust, they open. The body is not an enemy to be disciplined, nor a machine to be commanded. It is our oldest companion, the living instrument through which spirit becomes visible. For the nervous temperament, this truth can be startling. We have been taught to suspect the body, to view its tremors as betrayal, its fatigue as failure. Yet the very sensations we dread are messages, not malfunctions. They say, I am overburdened. I'm asking for rest. I'm calling you back from your abstractions. The body speaks the language of simplicity. It does not argue, it reminds. To outweed our nerves, we must first make peace with that language. Jackson and Salisbury wrote that, a body at ease trains the mind to ease. They meant that the cure for nervousness does not begin in thought but in sensation, in the re-education of posture, breath, and rhythm. One cannot think oneself calm while living in a clenched form. The muscles must first be taught what tranquility feels like so that the nerves may relearn safety through them. This is not sentiment, it is physiology. The mind may resist, but the body remembers. The art of physical calm begins with small obediences. Let the shoulders sink. Let the jaw soften. Unclench the hands. Notice how the breath, released from its prison, begins to deepen of its own accord. Each act of relaxation is an act of truth, the truth that life does not require continual strain. Gradually, the body's wisdom reawakens, and through it, the mind receives instruction. Calm is not a theory to be believed, but a state to be inhabited. The body is the stage upon which the drama of recovery unfolds. Every exercise in patience, every moment of non-resistance, leaves a mark upon it. In time, the body itself becomes a teacher. Its signals grow trustworthy, its reflexes steady. You begin to sense, long before the mind has caught up, when tension is returning. You correct it not with thought but with breath. You live less in the head and more in the whole organism, alert, grounded, present. This reconciliation with the body transforms the entire psychology of the self. No longer divided between command and obedience, the human being becomes a single, fluid intelligence. The nerves, once the instruments of panic, become conductors of grace. Energy, once squandered in inner struggle, is released for living. The body, at last befriended, becomes the gateway to serenity. Part 8, The Habit of Serenity. Calm, like any strength, matures through repetition. The nervous mind must not only discover peace, it must practice it until serenity becomes habitual, an instinct as natural as tension once was. This is the true meaning of outwitting our nerves, to make composure automatic, reflexive, unconscious. Serenity begins as an act of attention, but it endures only as a habit of response. One must teach the nerves moment by moment that calm is safe. Each time life provokes agitation, one answers differently, not with flight, not with struggle, but with stillness. Each time the old reflex is interrupted, the new one grows stronger. What was once learned in fear can be unlearned in peace. The authors called this process re-education through repetition. They understood that the nervous system is malleable, that emotion follows practice as surely as muscle follows exercise. To live serenely, then, is to train serenity as one trains balance or tone. The method is not mystical, it is consistent. One pauses, breathes, releases, trusts, again and again until the gesture of relaxation becomes woven into the fabric of being. At first, the habit of serenity feels fragile. Old patterns return, restlessness reasserts itself. But with patience, the nervous energy that once expressed itself in tremor finds new pathways, into work, into creativity, into quiet joy. The same force that once tormented now animates. For nervous vitality, rightly directed, is the raw material of genius. The great artists, the great thinkers, the great healers, all are those who have learned to govern their sensitivity without extinguishing it. Serenity is not dullness, it is vivid composure. It heightens perception because it frees perception from fear. The calm mind sees more, not less. It listens more deeply, feels more accurately, responds more truthfully. It wastes no strength in defending against life, it spends all its energy in living it. To make serenity habitual is to reshape one's entire existence around balance. Work becomes rhythmic, rest becomes deliberate, conversation becomes listening as much as speech. The self, once scattered across competing urgencies, becomes centered. One lives from the core outward, not from the periphery inward. And from that core emanates a quiet power, unhurried, unforced, unmistakable. At last, the nervous person ceases to measure progress by the absence of symptoms. They know calm not as the stillness of a pond, but as the deep current beneath every movement. They have ceased to try to be calm. They are calm, because they have learned that serenity is not an event, but a way of breathing. Part 9, The Recovered Self. All recovery is remembrance. The calm we seek is not something new, it is the original rhythm of our being, obscured but never lost. The child at play, absorbed yet unhurried, knew it. The artist in flow, the gardener in sunlight, the lover in quiet presence, each touches that native ease. To outwit our nerves is, finally, to return to that state of natural coherence, the self undivided. The nervous life is a life of separation. Mind against body, will against feeling, past against present. The recovered life is unity restored. It does not require perfection, only congruence. Thought and act, breath and motion, inner and outer, all moving in the same direction. When this alignment returns, the world itself seems to harmonize. One no longer reacts to it, one participates in it. Jackson and Salisbury ended their book with a simple truth. The cure of nerves is the cure of self-consciousness. What they meant was this. Nervousness is born of too much watching oneself live, too much effort to manage the process of being. The moment that observation softens into participation, the self recovers its natural poise. Life ceases to be a problem to be solved and becomes, once more, an experience to be lived. The recovered self is not the old self restored, it is the old self expanded, tempered by knowledge. It carries within it the memory of struggle, but no longer trembles before it. It moves with a kind of luminous ease, the serenity of one who knows that anxiety is only energy awaiting direction, and that peace is not withdrawal but mastery. Such a person does not withdraw from the world. They move among others quietly, helpfully, contagiously calm. Their presence heals not by doctrine but by example. They have learned the ultimate secret of outwitting the nerves. That calm is not achieved by isolation but by connection, to one's body, one's purpose, one's surroundings, one's fellow beings. The divided life has been reconciled. And so, in the closing light, the art of calm reveals itself as the art of wholeness. The age of strain gives way to the age of rhythm. The body is no longer burden but ally. The mind is no longer tyrant but servant. And the self, once fragmented by fear, stands again in quiet unity with life. Nothing magical has occurred, only the restoration of the natural order. The nerves, once overmastered by imagination, now sing again in tune with the heart. Outwitted not by force but by understanding, they fulfill their original purpose, to carry the messages of the soul through the delicate instrument of the body, faithfully and without distortion. The art of calm is not escape, it is return. To simplicity, to balance, to trust, to the steady luminous rhythm of being alive. Closing reflection. Vedira. When the world grows too loud, we forget how much wisdom lives in stillness. But every age of noise has its counterpoint, a quieter age waiting beneath it. And if we listen closely, that age begins again within us. We have been taught to chase calm as though it were something distant, a skill, a reward, a secret only the strong can reach. But calm was never far away. It was simply buried under our need to prove, to defend, to hurry. It was waiting for our surrender. Each breath is a return. Each pause, a small act of faith, that we are allowed to exist without tension, without performance, without the armor we thought we needed. In this silence, the nerves are not our enemies. They are messengers of life, trembling, yes, but alive. And when we learn their language, when we no longer fear their voice, we discover that they were never warning us of danger, only asking us to come home. Here, at the end of this reflection, remember this simple law. Peace is not the absence of struggle. It is the rhythm of the spirit remembering how to move with life again. It is not something we build, it is something we uncover. And if we are patient, if we keep listening, the quiet mind will return to its natural brightness. Clear, steady, and endlessly kind. This has been Vedira. Thank you for walking with me through the art of calm. Until next time, breathe, and let the world soften back into rhythm.